VIP. Let's kick it.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Show. You're listening to the first and only podcast dedicated to the business of pharmacy.
All right, stop.
You can find all of our episodes at pharmacypodcast.com.
This is Eric Fromhart from Secure 340B, and you are listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
So I've been in the pharmacy sector of our great and complex healthcare system for quite some time, but I still have a hard time wrapping my head around some of the terminology, some of the processes, and it's usually how a pharmacist receives compensation for services. And one of those topics that I very much track and wonder about is the aspect of 340B pharmacy. This is Todd Urey. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and it's very exciting to have an expert on with us today, Mr. Eric Fromhart with Secure 340B. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Yo, VIP. Let's kick it.
Thanks, Todd. Good to be here.
So the 340B program can be that significant profit center for a pharmacy's business. And if you can discover its potential and really understand how it works, there's more options for a pharmacy to grow, whether that is servicing assisted living facilities, long-term care pharmacy, community centers. Regardless, determining the best fit for your pharmacy specific situation is really important. So when I learned about you, Eric, and we met through Twitter, I met some of the best contacts I have in the pharmacy sector through Twitter. I'll tell you what, probably the majority of our podcast hosts also came through Twitter, which is just amazing how social media has really grown and worked. But Secure 340B, your guys are dedicated to the independent pharmacy sector, which is close to my heart. That's where I started off. And your goal was to really empower that independent pharmacy with knowledge and data in order to bring the clarity and transparency and optimization back to any 340B program. So, I'm going to throw it to you because you're the expert. It's why you're here today. Do an introduction. Tell us who you are, what's Secure 340B, what is 340B for goodness sakes, and I'm just going to kick it over to you, Eric.
All right. Well, thank you. And yes, that is our mantra. So Secure 340B, we started it just to be a resource for independent pharmacies in the 340B program. As the industry has expanded in terms of 340B, pharmacies and independents have become more and more involved in the program, and there are hundreds of resources for the covered entity or the 340B eligible facilities that you can find, consultants, companies, etc. There were zero for independent pharmacies, and so pharmacies being an integral part of the contract pharmacy 340B model, our opinion was that if you had a pharmacy that understood the program and knew what they were getting into, and most importantly knew that it was a benefit to their business, then they would stay in it and want to continue in the program. So that's why we started, and we kind of saw some inefficiencies or gaps in the market, and thought that would be a something to fill. And so far it's been very well received, and we're happy about it.
So if I take a pause here, I'm a pharmacy owner. I got 3 pharmacies. I got some senior care business. I participate in Medicare Part D in some capacity. Back up for a second and tell us, what is 340B?
Yeah. So that's the starting point. So I know there's some misinformation or incomplete information and knowledge about the program itself. So first of all, at its core, 340B is actually relatively simple. It's a drug discount program that was enacted in 1992. It is not government funded. Keep in mind, it is government mandated. So the law required manufacturers to offer these discounts to certain health centers, hospitals, clinics, etc., in order to receive rebates from Medicare and Medicaid. So obviously, at the time, the manufacturers said, well, that's fine. That's going to be a small sliver of our business. So they said, sure. And so again, at its core, it's all it is a discount drug. So these facilities can purchase these drugs at a fraction of what a regular retail pharmacy might purchase it at. Now, I say it's simple at its core, but as you expand and get into a contract pharmacy relationship or arrangement, that's where it gets a little bit more complex and confusing, and there's a lot of misunderstanding of how it all works. And I think on this show, I hope to at least convey the kind of a little bit of clarity into how the mechanism works in today's environment.
So coming out in 1992, it is not funded by a federal or state government, but it's mandated. It's mandated at the federal level, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then assumptions and the old way of doing 340B at pharmacy and how it's evolved. Like, take us, lots have happened since 1992. Goodness gracious, I graduated in 1991. You were probably even younger than that, so we'll not talk about our ages here, but tell us about the evolution of it.
Yeah, so back in the day, I will say, so there's kind of like the quote-unquote old way of doing things and the newer way. So since its inception early on, there was limitations to the number of contract pharmacies. So each site at a facility could only have one partner contract pharmacy. And so what used to happen would that the pharmacies would, and typically it was independent and community pharmacy at that time, since it was these one-off relationships, but they had the capacity to contract directly with one of these facilities. They would keep a separate inventory, so they'd have a shelf for 340B product, and when patients from that clinic would come in, they would hand their prescription, and this is back when it was paper prescriptions, and so there sometimes would be a stamp that said 340B on it, and so that would tell the pharmacist that, hey, we got to pull this inventory from our 340B bucket, and generally it was mostly the uninsured, so people that didn't have insurance would be able to buy these and get access to these prescriptions for an extremely discounted rate. As things progressed, you included not only the uninsured, but some of the insured prescriptions would be included in these programs, and that allowed for not only to offer discounts to the uninsured patients of a community, but also patients that did have some sort of commercial insurance. The clinic was able to generate a new revenue stream to expand their services. And so one of the highlights of 340B that always gets thrown around there is not only to offer access to medications for the uninsured, but it also is meant to expand dollars for the safety net environment, which is these critical access hospitals, rural health centers, community health centers, et cetera. So the program is really good in that sense, in that it allows a huge discount, like I said, to uninsured folks, but at the same time allows an additional revenue stream. So the separate inventory, I hear this a lot when I talk to pharmacies.
Oh my goodness, this is all I hear. This is the nightmare piece to this. I mean, and that my comfort zone has always been the pharmacy management system. So you're a SuiteRx user, you're a QS1 user, you're using Keycentrix, RxKey, and their question that I get is, what about my inventory and what about the money? Like, how can we separate this in our business? Yes,
and so when talking to pharmacies, the first thing I always ask is, so what do you know about 340B? And a lot of the times I hear them say, well, I know you got to keep a separate inventory, and that is not necessarily true these days. So kind of moving on into the modern era of 340B, and we'll get into the inventory and money flow of it. But
so this is post parachute pants, post Milli Vanilli. This is after Ice Baby. That's what.
Yes. So around 2010, 2011, the program was expanded so that you didn't have to have just a one-to-one relationship anymore. Now these covered entities could basically cast a net to any pharmacy that was nearby, and so you could have as many pharmacies as you really wanted. And so now chains started getting involved. Independents were still involved. It got pretty broad. But anyway, to help expand this, these companies started arriving called 340B third-party administrators. And so they developed software that would basically be kind of like the outsourced mechanism for not only the facility but also the pharmacy to track and input eligibility requirements so that they could qualify prescriptions as 340B eligible. They would also then track the drugs that were being dispensed and captured, and then that would track. They were placing orders for the pharmacies and generating reports and capturing all of these claims to kind of automate the program. So it in a sense made things much more streamlined and automated, but in a different sense it made things a little bit more complex for an independent pharmacy. And so that's when we talk about the inventory and the money. So for a pharmacy, there's no longer a need for a separate inventory. So now the inventory is blended. It's virtual. So they oftentimes call it the virtual inventory, in which the pharmacy essentially loans out their product to a 340B patient, and then the covered entity then replaces or replenishes that inventory back to them. So as we know, in independent pharmacy, inventory is a key piece of our business, and we watch it very tightly in order to protect our cash flow. And so that's where 340B can get somewhat invasive to the pharmacy's operation, in that this inventory is replaced when the pharmacy doesn't necessarily or may not necessarily want nor need the drug at that time. And so that's kind of one of the impacts on pharmacies that goes somewhat unnoticed by folks that are involved in this program that are not at the pharmacy level. So
what about the rebates, the dirty word that I'm about to say, the DIR fees, retail gross margins? Like, how does that all fit in? Yeah, so the program, so I hear a lot from non-pharmacy participants in 340B is that this is just a transaction at the pharmacy level. They're putting pills in a bottle. It's no different than what they're already doing. So a dispensing fee a little bit above what their retail margins are okay, which that is a very simplified view of it, and it's true. Yes, the pharmacy is still just putting pills in the bottle. However, there is so much more to it that is kind of below the surface. And so inventory, obviously, as I explained, can be a huge factor. If the volume is high in 340B, you're talking a lot of inventory coming from the 340B program replaced. And so that the pharmacy basically loses control of their buying and purchasing on that inventory, and it requires them to take action and develop kind of a process to address that. So that has a direct impact on their cash flow. If generics are in the program, in the 340B program, that what happens in this program is that you essentially transfer your purchases from your retail wholesaler over to 340B, and the hospital or clinic then buys your drugs and replaces them to you, but it's on their account. And so if you have a good generic rebate and you move some of these purchases from your retail wholesaler to 340B, that impacts your rebates directly, especially if you have your generic buying ratio. As we know, the more dollars you spend on generics, sometimes the better rebate on those. So if you move those purchases away, it directly impacts your rebate structure on your wholesaler side. DIR fees are compounded when 340B is involved. And again, I hear a lot that, hey, pharmacies are getting DIR fees no matter what, which is true. And then I hear that that is not what does the 340B have to do with it?
But unfortunately, the way that these mechanisms are, it compounds DIR fees, and I'll explain that. In that, the way these third-party administrators pick up these transactions, it's from the switch level. So as we know, when a pharmacy runs a prescription, goes through a switch, comes back with the copay and the reimbursement, and that's what's adjudicated. And so these companies pick that information up at the adjudicated level. And so let's say a pharmacy dispensed a drug for $200 and they adjudicated it at $200. Now, if their dispensing fee on 340B is $20, let's say, then the way the money flow works of this program is that they will be invoiced $180, and that will go to the hospital, and the hospital will take that $180 and buy the drug and have it resent to the pharmacy. If there is a DIR fee on that transaction, however, of $20, let's say, in reality, the pharmacy only collected $180 and therefore should have only sent $160 to the covered entity. So in that respect, DIR fees are absolutely a loss in 340B, and they must be addressed. The last thing is that, I just try to clear up and make clear the terminology in this program. So a lot of times I hear, they call it a dispensing fee in 340B, which is somewhat misleading because, you hear, hey, you get a pharmacy hears, I get a dispensing fee and then I get my drugs back for free. And that's not entirely true. It's somewhat misleading in that they refer to it as a dispensing fee in 340B, not in the terms that we're used to in retail pharmacy, which is, we have AWP minus 16% plus $2.50 dispensing fee. In 340B, you should consider your dispensing fee as your new gross margin per script. And so in that respect, you must look at what your normal retail margins are on the business that's going to be 340B and determine your new gross margin based on that, because obviously you don't want to just break even. You want this program to be an increase for you. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. And so that's some of the things that pharmacies must consider as they enter into some of these arrangements.
So that's the guidance that Secure 340B is delivering. That's the direction that you're putting in place for these independent pharmacy owners. And what you're saying is, why are you allowing an opportunity to generate additional revenue and serve your community in this capacity? Why not do it? So that's what I'm excited about. I want to hear more about maximizing profitability via, different words like the spread per se, minimal operation impact to workflow and existing operations. Kind of give our listeners some highlights, and then when you're listening to the show, if you're in a car, keep your hands on the wheel. If you're at your desk and you're listening to this, or you're at home or after hours, whatever, secure340b.com. That's secure340b.com. Take a look at them. But Eric, kind of give our listeners kind of the steps, what first steps to take to kind of make this happen.
So we believe at Secure 340B, like you said, Todd, that this program, if you have an opportunity and you are an independent retail pharmacy, you definitely should take advantage of that, because if done right, it can be a very good thing for your business, a significant profit center, as we said at the beginning of the show. But in order to have it be that way, you have to understand the realities of the situation. So, there are various, companies out there. There's various models. There's different fee structures. There's all this. All of that must be understood going into it in order to have the program be done right and be a positive experience for the pharmacy overall. So what we try to do is educate a pharmacy, first of all, with information and data, so that you have the full picture as a pharmacy. So, and we believe that if you have all of the information, and that allows or empowers the pharmacy to make a fully informed decision. And so, I would never want to be sold on something or I've heard pharmacists say I was coerced into doing 340B, and I just sit there thinking, well, why would you ever do anything if you felt coerced into it? I mean, this program is voluntary. You don't have to do it, but we believe you should, and we help pharmacies do that. And so we look at the whole picture, not just the dispensing fee or the gross margin in 340B. That is a factor, but we look at the whole picture. So we try to maximize their profitability, and we call it the spread, which is the difference between 340B fees and your normal retail margins. But we try to minimize the operational impact to the pharmacy's existing operation. And that is, how do we reduce the inventory hassle and headaches that come from this program? So we try to look at that. And then we also inform pharmacies of their options. And that's something that they don't necessarily get. So when they are approached by these covered entities or these TPA companies, they get a contract, and it has a suggested dispense fee or fee structure or model. And if you don't know what your options are or what the flexibility is, you might just say, all right, well, I'll take that. And so we try to tell pharmacies, hey, look, you don't have to take that. This is your program too. I mean, so pharmacies see the patients, they receive the inventory, and they hold and collect all the money. So pharmacies really have a certain power in this program and control, and they just need to know that they can wield that. And so when approached for doing 340B, you absolutely should consider it, and I would encourage them to do it. But make sure you educate yourself and know exactly the key terms I would always look into. So if anyone out there is writing this down, always ask these questions, these three questions before you begin the program. What is the model? What is the dispensing fee? And how often am I going to get my inventory? Those three questions can really impact it, because I would say the model is probably the number one question to ask, because a dispensing fee in one model can be great, but that same dispensing fee in another model is not so great. So those are kind of the things that we help to clear up. And again, in our pitch, we like to so our kind of tagline is Secure 340B. Clarity, transparency, and optimization, and that's really, in a nutshell, those three words are what we try to bring to pharmacies, most importantly, but in general, the 340B contract pharmacy arrangement for the whole community, for the hospital and the pharmacy. So
that's great, Eric. I tell you what, in wrapping up, just as the listeners are understanding, they're pulling into work, try to keep the podcast for your commute. Secure340b.com. It'll be easy to remember. I can't get 1992 out of my head, so I'm going to have to say that you have to stop, collaborate, and listen. Eric's got a brand new invention. Something grabs a hold of us tightly. You just have to go to 340bsecure.com, and it's all good. Ice, ice, baby. You probably don't even remember that song, do you?
Oh, yeah. I hope people got that one.
So, once again, 340B, secure340b.com. And Eric's going to guide you through the process, answer questions for you. It's easy enough just to pick up the phone and give him a call or send him an email. His email address is eric@secure340b.com. Very easy to remember. Eric, we've really needed some guidance on this. I'm so glad that you reached out to me via the Twitter sphere, and I'm excited about this. We'll see how much coverage we can get the independent pharmacist that hasn't been involved, and or the pharmacy that has been involved, but it really hasn't been maximizing it. So I think there's opportunities here.
Definitely, and we appreciate it, Todd, as well. Thank you for having us on today. It's been a pleasure, and pharmacies that hear this have some interest, and happy to help.
Thank you so much. You were listening to the Pharmacy Podcast with Eric Fromhart with Secure 340B. We thank you for listening.